Watching the market during the coronavirus. So I've got some good news, some bad news this week, looking at making a couple moves. I'm also going to talk about an alert I got from Questrade that was telling me about trading above high volume, and we're going to talk about what that means coming up. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Sean. If you're new to this channel, we're talking about saving, making, and mastering your money, documenting my journey to financial freedom. If you're interested in that kind of thing, please consider subscribing. So let's get right to it. I've got some good news and bad news this week instead of just bad news about the virus. Let's start with the bad news. BC, Ontario, and Quebec have now shut down all non-essential businesses. So anything that's not a utility or a laundromat or a grocery store is basically shut down now and closed. They have been begging people to stay home and just prevent the spread of this virus. Some provinces consider certain construction projects essential, but for the most part, everything has now been shut down. It makes sense because those are probably the most populous provinces in Canada, and it's where we've been seeing the most spread and the most deaths. So I think it's a good thing. Battery just died. That was kind of weird. So the other thing that's kind of changed in my province is here in Alberta, they have started to hand out fines for those people who do not pay attention to the quarantine rules. So what that means is if you're traveling here from outside of the country, you have to isolate yourself, quarantine yourself. If you come in contact with someone, you quarantine yourself. And if you do not follow those rules, you can be fined $1,000, I believe it was, up to $100,000 for repeated events. So this is a big step to kind of show how serious the province is about containing the virus, and some people weren't taking that message seriously before. This is just that extra step to show how serious the province really is. Finally, the big news that was maybe more global was the Olympics for 2020 have now been postponed till the following summer. So Tokyo was going to host the Olympics this summer, and they are now postponing it to 2021. They will still call it the 2020 Olympics apparently, but it's going to be next summer. I know Canada was one of a few countries that actually had already told the Olympic Committee that they will not be sending athletes this year due to this whole thing. That's the bad news. Now, there were two pieces of pretty good news this week. First one was coming out of China, in that 90 to 95% of businesses have now reopened, kids have gone back to school, life is starting to return to normal in China. Now, if you remember, that's where this whole thing started in about mid-January, and the virus was first kind of identified there. So that's a good sign. It's, maybe 9 weeks, let's say, 2.5 months, 9 weeks for that to transpire in China. So it gives you kind of an idea of what it might take here. The other nice little thing that I noticed this week has been that some of the things that were previously sold out in the grocery stores are now being stocked more regularly. I was able to get my hands on a package of toilet paper. I was also finding flour on the shelves in the store where it was previously cleaned out. So kudos to the supply chain teams and the grocery store workers and the managers that are keeping all these things running among this pandemonium. Huge pat on the back. So that does it for the news. If you guys are finding this useful, just a quick reminder, hit that like button. Now we'll go on to talking about the markets. So as I've mentioned, VSP.to is the stock that I put a huge majority of my money into. It's an ETF that tracks the S&P 500. This week, the stock, or the S&P, went up about 12% from Monday to Friday. It's sitting at about $43.21 now. So the stock has recovered slightly. We're not out of the woods by any means yet, but I was just trying to kind of ask myself when I would be comfortable trying to buy again. And I think I'm just gonna stick to my regular purchases like I do every month. I go in and I purchase. So I'm gonna go in and purchase that right now. I'm gonna do it for my Lira, and I'm gonna do it for my TFSA, and I'm gonna buy about $1,000 in each account, just because it's time to do that. Rather than try to time when I think the bottom is going to be for these accounts, I'm going to just stick with my regular routine and buy. So I'll put the orders for those up on the screen. You can see them in my Questrade account. I've got a few stocks here for the Lira account, and the TFSA is right here as well. So those are going to be my purchases, the orders I'm putting in now to pick up some stock on Monday morning. So now let's talk a little bit about the Air Canada stock, because I've mentioned this before. I bought 91 shares of this stock when it first dipped after the first week or so, and they were canceling trips to Asia over this coronavirus. It dipped down to $42.23 and I bought 91 shares of that. That position cost me about 3,800 bucks. The stock is now down to 15.24. So if I buy the same amount of stock right now, it'll be worth less than half of what I bought it for. So I bought when the stock dipped a little bit and the concerns were in Asia only, and thinking to get a 10% return if it comes back up was going to be pretty good for me. Now the stock has dipped to under 50% of that original value. And I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll buy the same amount of stock, the 91 shares, for the value that they are at right now, which is about 16 bucks, bringing down my average to about $30 per share instead of the $42 per share I originally bought them at. The thing is, this is a risk because essentially Air Canada is now waiting for money from the federal government in order to survive this. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to make that purchase. I still have about $7,300 in cash in this account, and I'll show you guys this order at the end as well. So that's it on the stock. Now there was a email I got from Questrade this week talking about Boeing. I'm not sure still why it was sending me information about Boeing because I don't have Boeing in my portfolio, but what it was saying was that it was trading above high volume. I might have it on like a watch list or something. Maybe that's why. Anyway, I didn't know what that was, so I figured maybe it'll help you guys if I did a little bit of research. So I'll just show you guys the email that was sent here. So it's just saying that a smart alert was triggered for Boeing. It's traded above high volume. Here's how much was traded that day. Now, as I explained, volume is just the amount of units going back and forth. And you can see here that there is a number for average volume. This is what they typically see every day. So normally Boeing will see about 11 million, 11.5 million units going back and forth traded. Now what they're seeing is 23 million, which is actually twice the average volume. So this is just an alert so that you can go in and investigate and see what's happening. Trading over high volume isn't a bad thing necessarily, especially if you see the price of the stock start to go up. That means that lots of people want to get it, so there's lots of stock being bought, and if you've already got a position, you can just sit back and watch the gains. But in my case, this alert was coming to me because there was a lot of people, it looks like, dumping Boeing stock. So it's kind of giving me an alert saying, hey, something happened today. At the time of this alert, it was down 20%, which totally means people were just dumping Boeing stock at the time. So it just sent me an alert saying there was more than what it typically sees as far as units being traded. So lots being sold off. So if you run into that, that's all that means. The high volume number comes from twice the amount of the average volume. Well, everyone, that's all I have for you this week. I'm going to spend this week researching a little bit for some Canadian dividend stocks. What companies might be a good purchase this coming week while we're still kind of in the low? I'm still not thinking I'm really trying to time the market right now. Absolutely, things could get worse, but right now prices are low enough that I'm interested in buying. I still believe that they'll eventually come back, so the sale is good enough for me to start looking at these pretty seriously. I was thinking if I hit 100 subscribers, or you guys can help me out with that because that is a goal of mine, I can open up the accounts and show you guys what I have in each one of them, and we can talk about that. Hope you guys have found this helpful. Have yourself a great week, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. So Ontario, Quebec, and BC have now shut down everything that they consider a non-essential. Tokyo is going to host the Olympics